First of all, I'd like to welcome everyone to our first annual Space Camp this week. We're calling these our Space Camp Lives. There's going to be a ton of activities and things going on today. My name is Suzanne Shaw. I am the Community Programs Manager here at Automation Anywhere. I run our user groups and have the opportunity to meet with many of you. As we go through this week and introduce kind of our Pathfinder community, I would like to give you just a little bit of overview. What is our Space Camp? Why are we here? And what is the Pathfinder community? For those of you who have joined, this will be a little bit of a repeat, but love to just continue to open the conversation with our members. So a common definition for Pathfinder is one that discovers a way, especially one that explores untraversed regions to mark out a new route. You, our Automation Anywhere global community leaders, are Pathfinders, and the community team is here to be one of your key partners in automation acceleration. Our annual Space Camp is going to mark the next chapter in our community partnership. This is your mid-year community symposium. We intend to propel you to the end of the year with mission success. So each day this week, we're offering daily activities, our Space Camp Lives, which you're here today. And we've done this in order to really provide the resources anchored on our Automation Pathfinder program missions. The Automation Pathfinder program is your flight map for automation success. And we're developed with over 20 years of firsthand automation expertise across thousands of use cases. Each mission is calibrated to serve as your blueprint for best practices to achieve scalable growth, measurable value, and long-term sustainability. You don't want to miss out on the action. I'm going to share some links in the chat, including our fun bot game season 4, which is an AI edition, all the rage. You'll have a chance to get hands-on in AI now. In the chat, I'm including 3 different links. One, you'll get, sorry, one moment while I just hurry and change my settings. So the first link is going to be for the event overview. So you'll see the sessions that are coming and everything else. Then we have our bot game season 4 for AI, and then also today's mission flight plan. So today's session is the 3rd, and there's 2 more coming. It's important that we meet your needs and deliver on all of your burning questions in each of these missions. Feedback is a gift. Please share. Our door is always open. There also will be a survey at the end, and we would love your feedback. We take that very seriously. Just a few rules of engagement, and then we'll get going. I'll highlight a few reminders about today's session. One is always be respectful. This is a professional forum. We are so happy to have you here. We will do our best to ask as many questions as time allows. We have some really great panelists here to speak specifically to citizen development, which is going to be fantastic. But also be sure to follow our social feeds and check inboxes and join our community for updates, including recaps, recordings, etc. We definitely want today to be a 2-way discussion. So the most exciting thing about Citizen Developer is just the conversations and the planning that goes into it. Use the chat to share Citizen Developer ideas and ideal use cases, as well as to collaborate with your peers. And then we'll leverage the Q&A questions for the panelists. And any information you'd love to hear from Anna and Afreen that they can answer. Let's go ahead and get this session kicked off. We are so lucky to have 2 of our citizen developer leaders in the industry as customers, and they are paving the way for citizen developer here, not only at Automation Anywhere, but for their own organizations, and then also our product leaders. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this off. Anu, take it away.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, good evening, everybody. Very excited to be here. I'm Anupama Ramesh. I'm a director of product at Automation Anywhere. I work on a lot of things, including cloud provisioning, licensing, and recently I've also got the analytics charter. I'm going to be responsible for CoE Manager. It's a very exciting new product we have in the market, and also in general, the whole analytics platform for Automation Anywhere. I'm so excited to be here with Anna and Afreen. They are like citizen development leaders in the industry. So I'm really looking forward to this session. Anna, over to you.
Thank you. So hi, my name is Anna Debolt. I am Right now, serving as a lead program manager at TIAA, which is a financial services company. I've got about 5 years of Automation Anywhere development under my belt. And as we'll talk about when we jump in, I don't have a programming background, so very much a citizen developer from the get-go. I'm actually transitioned into a new team here recently, and so very excited to kind of bring the automation journey to them. Lots of opportunities. So, Afreen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Afreen. I am an RPA process analyst and developer at NVIDIA. I've been there about 1.5 years now, and we have really, my team and I have paved RPA into the roadmap for operations. So we're really excited to be using this technology and growing in our automation capabilities. And we have a lot of citizen developers, so I'm excited to tell you all about that.
Awesome. That's great. Welcome, Anna and Efreen. Thank you for taking the time out with us today. So let's jump right into it. I guess first things first, right? What is citizen development? What do you guys think of when you think of citizen development? And if you can talk to us a little bit about the trends that are going on in your company and as the industry as a whole, we'd love to hear about it.
So I'll jump right in. To me, the citizen developer, right, is that non-traditional programming path, right? You don't necessarily know a coding language, but you know the business. You know all the business processes, the logic inside and out. And honestly, it could be a bigger investment in time to teach a developer the business rules than to teach somebody who knows the business rules how to use an RPA low no code solution. So to me, it's completely flipping the table that we're used to seeing where, all right, let me, write down these business requirements and hand it over. No, I'm going to write down the business requirements and I'm going to be responsible for the development.
Yeah, definitely. To add to that, I really believe that citizen developers are the backbone of RPA. These are folks who, you've hired because of their talent, and we want to leverage that talent, enable their learning to understand the technology. And they really help accelerate development of the bots. Like Anna said, they're taking responsibility for their own process. They have that understanding, that business background. They know what they're trying to achieve. And being able to empower on the business side, being able to empower folks to take their process, develop it in a way that helps them in their day-to-day is just such a beautiful thing.
All right, so sorry, I'm getting a little distracted with the chat here. That was excellent. And thank you for sharing that. And I think the way that we need to think about it also is that citizen development really helps organizations scale their automation journey itself, right? Because if you have a central center of excellence, that's absolutely critical as well. But sometimes when you're trying to scale fast, you need to have more hands on deck. So that's kind of where citizen development can become super, super helpful. Can you also share a little bit about how Automation Anywhere platform kind of has helped you, get started and get going with this?
Yeah, so the platform itself, like Anna said, low code. Yeah. So there's that ability to, look at the interface, play around with it, and build. But also they provide that the Automation Anywhere University with a bunch of very useful trainings. They have the bot store with pre-built bots, so you can, take and customize as you need. And what I love about the bot store is that if you just search something like Excel, it'll populate, I guess, mini modules or mini use cases that you can then take and say, hey, X, Y, and Z exists. How do we apply it to what we have, what use cases and what processes we have? So they've really built a platform that, leads to the success of RPA within your company.
Yeah, so to piggyback on that, a lot of the core functionality is incredibly user-friendly. So again, citizen developers are typically not coming from a coding or programming background. And so you don't necessarily have to know how it works. You know that it works, why it works. You click, you drag, it does what you tell it to. And this is where I know at least I nerd out a little bit, is if you go onto the community platform, you can see, hey, I'm trying to do this very specific thing. And while that may not be the very specific thing you're trying to do, the same answer that is given, you can probably take that nugget and apply it in a new way. So for example, using the community platform, we found a way to say, all right, we're going to not only launch a browser with the URL up, we're also going to suppress pop-ups in case your browser crashed the last time, right? Things like that, that I would have no idea how to do as a coder. Somebody who is familiar with programming was like, oh yeah, you should probably throw this little suffix on there. Great, now we have, because of Automation Anywhere, this community, this platform, that we can share these ideas. That's applicable no matter what industry you work in. Everybody launches Chrome. Everybody potentially has pop-up issues. So I think just one of the awesome things, in addition to the training that Efrain mentioned, is having that community space where you can bounce ideas off of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. That is exactly the reason why we do this, right? So what would you guys say are key requirements for the citizen development success of the citizen development program? So because it's more than just the product and platform, right? What in your mind constitutes a requirement to your citizen development program?
So I think one of the first things, and this is so debated, but you have to have a COE. And if you don't have a COE, you're setting yourself up for failure. Citizen developers cannot, they can't have that on their plate to control permissions and rules and all of that stuff. So you need a team, we call it, our platform team. You need someone who says, all right, we're gonna do this from the enterprise level, factoring in cybersecurity, factoring in IT processes, right, that vary by enterprise. And we're gonna say, this is the slate, and you can work within this. But if you do not have some kind of COE, it's a long road to haul.
Yeah, and I have a few more things to add in terms of what really builds that program. So along with a COE, you need a partnership with them. So as citizen developers, putting business folks out into the wild, having them develop, you don't want what's called a shadow IT. You want a partnership with IT that helps you build and grow together. We don't want, people going out, setting up their own securities and controls, and the rest of the enterprise is doing something else. The second thing that's really important is that drive and commitment from leadership. So we mentioned that citizen developers come from various technical backgrounds. So putting in that time, putting in that energy to give them priority to train, to practice developing, etc. That has to come from leadership. All of these folks have regular day jobs. So if we're not putting that focus into giving them that time, it's not going to succeed. And the last thing, just like how Automation Anywhere has its own community platform, within our company, within NVIDIA, we've created what's called the Citizen Developer Forum. So it's just a very constant connection with the other citizen developers to talk about obstacles, to talk about successes, so that we are not all using that same learning curve. We're learning from each other to better ourselves.
Yeah, that's great, Efrain. Yeah, so I'm sure then you must have seen the Pathfinder program has a blueprint for citizen development success. So I'm sure you've seen that. And one thing also that that I want to point out here is, even within the platform, we have folks who are looking at how do we build approval workflows, how do we build in-app collaboration type things, right? Like for you to quickly chat somebody to get help and things like that. So those will also, from a product perspective, I think help that effort. So thank you for sharing that. Did you have anything else to add? I may have interrupted you there, but if not, we can.
Nope.
Okay, all right. So I think the next question that I have is, how are you as a company, recruiting people and training them to be citizen developers?
So when I started this program a year and a half ago, I came in with the idea and the message that everyone and anyone can become a citizen developer. Here's some training, here's a link, work on it. And so that is true. However, what we have learned over time is that at certain checkpoints, we need to reassess citizen developers' skills, make sure that the time and the input that they're putting in matches what they're getting out from automation. So we have a few things regarding training. We have, like I said, the Automation Anywhere trainings, which are amazing, so many different use cases. And we also provide, I also do one-on-one training with citizen developers to make sure they are up to speed. If at any point they just find it to be, not within their realm, not within the scope of what they're capable of doing, that's fine. We can always find an alternative in their team so that their team does have that citizen developer.
So our approach at TIAA is actually a little bit different. We still consider ourselves citizen developers, but in terms of the traditional approach, it's literally our day job to build this automation. So we don't do operations work and also automate. We automate the operations work in conjunction with the businesses who are doing it. And so what we're looking for is more than anything a propensity to learn, right? We've already discussed this is low, no code solutions. There's a lot of drag and drop. There's a lot of, here's an SOP. We literally want to follow these steps and just have them, done automatically. So our biggest recruiting look for is, are you a self-starter? Are you willing to learn? How do you deal with, frustration and setbacks? Because sometimes, you think, oh, I did this exactly right. Why isn't it working? It might take a minute to troubleshoot and figure out, exactly what went wrong. And it's not the process. It could be, whether it's you used screen scraping, used image versus object cloning. And I know I'm dating myself because we don't call it object cloning anymore. But really it's that, can you kind of troubleshoot in your mind and figure it out? Can you follow the logic? And can you learn? Can you, keep up to date with all the new things coming out on Automation Anywhere University? And, can you take that on yourself as a self-starter?
Yeah. And I would think that support from your managers is also important, right? Because like you said, sometimes you have to balance both things while you're building the operation. Nothing stops, right? So you still have to do your quote unquote day job. So I think support from the chain as well would be super important. So thank you for sharing that. So that is a good information that you gave us. I think what I took away from that is just identifying the right kind of people with propensity to learn, as Anna was saying. People who are curious and motivated, they really do want to innovate, and they are willing to learn and create solutions. I mean, even though it's a low-code platform, there's still some learning involved there. And I think like pretty much all of us use software, right? I don't know, unless somebody's living under a rock. We all use like tools and technology in our day-to-day lives. So yeah, so this is kind of the next logical step for a lot of people. So now that you've identified the right people and you maybe train them and all of that, I'm trying to understand what kind of things do you do to keep them engaged, to make sure that they really latch onto this? How do you drive adoption?
So one of the things that we I say we used to fight over, I mean that very endearingly, right, is we would say, all right, what area is this, next bot going to be in? What is it doing? Oh, that's a cool project. I want to do that one, or oh, this is an extension of one that's already there. We're adding enhancements. Maybe we're effectively creating a second bot that does the same thing, right? And so part of how we keep our citizen developers engaged is we name all our bots, and they get names early on. Sometimes their early on names are not what they go into production with. But they're a part of the team, right? They have a name and they have a personality, and that's how we relate to them. And honestly, sometimes that's how people stay focused and engaged, and we get that adoption. We've got our problem children, we've got our like A honor roll children. And so our bots are just like that. The ones we know are going to break when the wind blows because the system that they're automating in is just that weird, or the ones we know consistently are going to work every single time and we never have issues with. But that's kind of one of the fun ways that we try and keep not just our team, but also the business team that's using them engaged, is making them more like a teammate.
Anna, what's your favorite bot name?
This is near and dear to my heart. She never made it to production. Her name was Brenda. And the business team that I was working with for Brenda, they killed her. And I had a little graphic on a PowerPoint that I presented to them, and I was a little bit salty that they killed Brenda. And so there was definitely a little tombstone with a little dead robot holding flowers. And no guilt trip whatsoever to my business partners. But
I mean, that just shows the value of the bots and automation, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna have a little mini memorial for them.
This was a piece of me that y'all did not want. So yes, Brenda was my favorite bot name.
What did Brenda do? Just curious.
So this was probably 4 years ago. I'm having trouble off the top of my head remembering exactly what Brenda stood for, but they're usually an acronym, right? So brokerage. Oh, it was something with disbursements. So disbursement automation was the DA in Brenda. But yeah, basically it was supposed to go through and take digital forms that came in and extract the data from those digital forms and then go into our brokerage system and key in those disbursements.
Looks like you're not the only one who's naming their bots. I see that naming their bots. That is such a cute story. Thanks.
Oh, I love Bob the Biller.
TV. All right. That was funny. All right. So the other thing I wanted to ask you is, outside of the citizen development program, so for example, other roles, other people in the organization, the internal or external, your customers, what kind of support is really needed for the program to be successful?
So I've found, so within NVIDIA, we have a few different orgs that have an RPA program, but operations, where I'm located, has by far, achieved so many more bots. Our program is far more mature. And we found that this is really because we have leadership driving the program. We have a dedicated person for digital transformation, for making this happen, both on the ops side and on the IT side. So without these two key stakeholders, the program is really just going to plateau. You're not going to be able to drive that interest, drive that communication in different teams to get use cases, to get citizen developers. It can very easily, I guess, fall off the map, because on our end, we do have day jobs, of course. So because of that piece, priorities keep piling up. So if you don't have someone pushing it, it can easily fall off your top 5.
So I think one of the kind of similar but a different aspect, one of the big challenges we had when starting up was getting buy-in from IT and application owners. Yeah. So for example, when we're automating something and we know it's going to be an unattended bot run and we need a service account to log in and do, in order to be compliant with cybersecurity, we can't hard code our username and password. They need to know it's a bot and not a person. So great, we'll create a service account. Well, some applications don't want service accounts touching their stuff. They want to know it's a person. We can tie it back to a person and not a group of people who could potentially be running this bot. Or we would face issues getting support from IT. One thing we found, we needed to really kind of speak up and say, we are a legitimate solution. We need to be taken seriously. We're freeing up your capacity by doing this work for you. So at the very least, right, you can meet us at the table and answer our questions or provide the support that we need in order to utilize, API services that you own or things like that, so that this new work doesn't come to your team. And then everybody wins, business gets what they need faster. IT doesn't have the backlog of new work intakes, but it really is a partnership saying, we got to play in the sandbox together.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it, Anna. So let's switch gears a little bit. I'm interested to hear from you how your company is measuring success. This is close to my heart because I'm starting to run the analytics program for the platform. So I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about this. How are you guys measuring success?
So we measure success by time returned back to the business. And I really want to highlight returned rather than saved. And this is because the goal of our program is to give back time to business folks for them to do, the millions of other things they have to do. And so this time returned also allows people to feel empowered that, job security. They want to make sure that, these bots aren't affecting them. And as well as time returned, we are looking at value. Now, this one's a little tricky. Every bot, every use case has a different understanding of value. Some folks, cycle time reduction. Some people have improved response time. So the value that each of these bots are adding, I've been able to group them into different categories and buckets to really understand how are they affecting the business besides hours returned. And one thing that we don't generally look at is the cost savings unless that is specifically that use case. So I know people group hours and cost savings together by looking at FTE costs. That's not in our playbook. We do not do that. Again, just to make sure that citizen developers are aware of the purpose of the program. But the value is something that we take to leadership to be able to say, okay, besides all of these hours, which is, just a number at the end of the day, this is how it's really adding to the business.
So we have a couple different levers that we look at when we're trying to prioritize and decide and track, how we're spending our time. Obviously, FTE saves, hours saved, that equivalent is right on up there at the top. If we have a use case that equates to, 4 or 5 FTE saves, of course, we're going to do it. And we don't necessarily look at time saved versus work avoidance. Mm-hmm. We just kind of understand in our current climate, usually hiring is not an option, right? Bringing in more people, but we recognize volumes are going to continue to increase. So rather than asking our staff to do more work with either the same amount of people or less, we provide those automated solutions so that, like Efrain said, we're freeing up their time to do the stuff that we need a human to do, like those higher cognitive, activities. The other thing we look at is, are there any risks involved? So being in a financial company, we have regulators and we have rules that we have to follow. And so if we find that there is a process or a gap that opens us up to risk or potential fines, even if there's not a huge dollar save or a huge FTE save, we strongly consider those opportunities as well, because we don't want the reputational damage of not being in compliance. And then there's also, potential fines. So it's not necessarily money saved as much as costs avoided.
Correct. Risk avoidance. Yeah.
But yes, we certainly look at, is there an adverse impact if we don't do this from a risk perspective?
Yeah, Okay, cool. All right. So the other thing that we also talk about, essentially when we talk about citizen development, is like how do we address concerns on the longevity of the program? Like how do you manage the entire automation life cycle? How do you incorporate checkpoints? We talked a little bit about evaluating value, but that's a big part of it too. And then all the way up to retirement. So the entire life cycle. I'm sure a lot of people on the call would be interested in hearing your perspective on this as well. I know I sure am.
So this is one that I feel very strongly about. In our space, from our perspective, almost every bot should have a shelf life. Because at the end of the day, any bot that we would create is a stopgap solution for what is ultimately a workflow deficiency. If all of our systems did all the things we wanted them to do on time within budget, we would not have an automation program, right? So the ideal state is we don't exist. We recognize we're not in that ideal state. And anytime we talk about updating workflow applications, it's 3 to 5 year commitment, multi-million-dollar budgets, and that's not always realistic. So we try when we are approaching new use cases and saying, hey, this is what we think. First thing we do is look at the roadmap. Are we going to automate something that a workflow solution is going to come in and fix in the next 6 months to a year? Because if so, it's not worth our time, right? The juice isn't worth the squeeze there. Are we looking at something that funding was maybe cut and scope decreased on a workflow update, and so we need this as a stopgap solution until the next budget year, right? Yeah. Things like that. That's where we don't necessarily want a bot out here that does the same thing for 10 years, unless it's something like, hey, go clean up my inbox, right? That's never going to go away. But if we've got a bot moving data from one application to another so that a person doesn't have to, the ideal solution to that is an API in place that does that discussion between applications. A bot theoretically would be out of a job once that ideal solution is met. So we try and be very upfront. These are stopgap solutions. They may hang out for a while, but in an ideal state would not be needed.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Anna. So what we do is we do 6-month check-ins from bot production date. So every 6 months we're going in and we're saying, does it still add the value that you initially told us it would? And are you still using it? Do any changes need to be made? Mm-hmm. These follow-ups allow us to make sure that, we don't have too many bots in production that aren't being used. We are making sure that we're putting in that time and effort to change and add as value as processes change, and things like that. So lifecycle management, very important. You don't want all of these bots out in the field doing nothing. Exactly.
Tying back to that, right? The number of bots you have in production just means that much more production support that you're probably providing yourself, because if y'all are like us, our prod support team doesn't really address our PA. They're like, nope, you build it, you fix it, it's all on you. So we really want to make sure, like Afreen said, that what we have out there is providing value, especially if it's something we have to go in and touch regularly.
Gotcha. Yeah, so in terms of the lifecycle management, I think the CoE Manager feature set that we rolled out is going to be very useful, right? So it gives you visibility centrally to see, what your status is, where you are, your development, as well as your whole deployment and what kind of value you're getting out of it. And your change management as well to a large extent, right? So change management is one of the big things that takes up a lot of oxygen, if you will. And then stakeholder reporting, managing your cadence, all of that. So that's a cool tool for everybody to check out that can help you a lot in this area. So in terms of change management, I think we did touch upon that a little bit, but is there something that you guys would like to add in terms of how you formalize that process?
So we have a process driven by our CoE. They basically do weekly deployments. So at TIAA for IT, we have kind of the monthly release window. If it's a big code change, right, you go there. For Automation Anywhere, given that it's such a contained ecosystem, they've agreed to let our CoE man weekly releases. And so we've set up a process around how to request a change, what documents are required to validate the change, evidence of testing, sign off, all those normal things that you include in SDLC changes. And then we do implement a code freeze. The change needs to be submitted by a certain deadline, and whatever code that you've packaged up for deployment obviously can't be changed after that deadline to ensure that it is stable, it's ready to go into production. And then, of course, we also talk about, what's our rollback plan if we have our new files deployed and we go to run them in production and see an issue. We're taking copies of what was there before so that we can, go back to the last usable version.
Cool.
Yes, it's exactly the same. We have all of these IT controls. We have our change review board who is very on board with RPA now, very familiar with the technology. So getting approval from them, etc. However, we do roll our bots out ad hoc. So we don't have a specific window that we wait for that.
Okay, perfect. All right. I think that brings us to the end of my questions, at least. So Anna, Afreen, thank you so much. This was super enlightening. I really enjoyed talking to the two of you. We covered a lot, didn't we? I mean, it was a fun conversation, but we did talk a lot about what is citizen development? How did you guys roll out this program? What does it take for somebody like a business process SME to become a citizen developer? How do we make the program successful and make sure it lives long? And how do we drive adoption, scale automation? Wow, we really went through the entire gamut. So thank you so much. That was just awesome. I hope the people who are listening also were able to get a lot out of Anna and Efreen's experience. So thank you so much for that.
We have several questions, so I'm going to hop in and ask questions from the audience, which I think is fantastic. These are some great. So I'm actually going to go back. Anna, Cameron's asking a little bit more about the CoE, and I think you'll have some really great perspective on this. And he says, if you have an extensive citizen development program, why would you need a CoE? So do you mind just kind of giving some insight on what that looks like? And then Afreen, I'm sure you can speak to that as well.
Of course. So we employ a federated model at TIAA, and what that means is we have different factories throughout the enterprise, different pockets of automation. And so each of those would have varying levels of citizen developers. I think our factory is the only one that's truly all citizen developers. Sometimes we have robotics factories where it's just kind of like oh, there's an IT group over here. We're just also going to give them a license. And so it's not necessarily citizen development, but any of our Automation Anywhere, I don't want to say applications, but groups roll up to the CoE. And so the CoE is a bit broader than just citizen development, which is why we have the difference. And they control and set policy at the enterprise level. So we can set policy, what citizen developers' best practices are, shouldn't do, all those things for our factory, but we can't necessarily influence directly another factory in our enterprise. So that's just the way TIAA does it. If another company does look more holistically and less at a federated model, but more like a centralized model, yes, I can totally see where they would be synonymous.
Yeah. Afreen, do you have anything to add? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we have so many securities and controls in place, and that is, not in the realm of the business. So the CoE is really driving that, as well as managing licensing, contracts, etc. We don't want to, give more responsibilities to the business side.
Yeah, I think those are great answers. Just it's more complex than that, right? So I think this is a really great question from Craig. Are there any limitations for citizen developers that may prevent them from building and deploying bots following the necessary procedures established by the company IT and audit processes?
Yeah, so this is one where it is so vital to have that buy-in from traditional technology partners. And the example I'll give is if you need to make an API call or a database connection, or if there is an old antiquated application where the UI just does not support automation anywhere, screen scraping. And the example I'll give you is we have one, I like to call it Oregon Trail. It's called Legacy, but it looks like you're playing Oregon Trail. And there's absolutely no way we can automate in the UI there. So what we have to do anytime we need data out of Legacy is make an API call to the Legacy database. The IT teams who hold the keys to that, right? They want to know who's calling, how many connections are left open, what's our volume, is this creating system latency, right? All those things that traditional IT departments and teams care about and track that maybe we as citizen developers aren't even aware of, that could potentially be an issue. We sometimes find those as we start to go down the rabbit hole and say, okay, well, I can't go in the front end. Let me try and go in the back end. How do I go in the back end? And then we can occasionally find IT partners who are very defensive. Why are you asking for access to this? And so there's absolutely stuff out there that is not in a citizen developer's control that can adversely impact your project, right? At the end of the day, if they don't give you access to their tool, if they don't give you access to their application, you can't do it. But that's where building that relationship and having that open dialogue and saying, this is why I need to do it. And if you don't let me do it, business is going to come to you and ask you to do it, is so key.
And for us, we have that partnership with IT, and that goes beyond, just working with them. For all of our use cases, we have stakeholders from IT, we have BSAs, we have the SME, we have the developer. All of these people are constantly working together and are aware of all of the security and controls. So that limits those conversations happen way earlier before, production even starts. So it's really important to have those stakeholders on board in constant communication and working with the developer.
Yep, I think that's all great. Another question, and I'm actually going to add a little bit to it just because it might help with some of the clarity here. How are your citizen developers documenting their bots, and what requirements have you implemented? And I would also add to that the monitoring of them. Anna and or Afreen, do you want to take that?
So could you repeat that last part? Monitoring of what?
Yeah, so basically documenting the bots. Okay. And I added monitoring just because we get asked that a lot, but okay. How are your citizen developers tracking that?
So we actually have, I love to hate it and I hate to love it, an application that is homegrown to TIAA that our CoE has spun up. It's called the Bot Center. And whether it's an Automation Anywhere bot or it's a Java bot, an open source bot, doesn't matter. Everything is registered there. And that is one of the ways that we track who's automating, what it's touching, right? If we bring something down, we need some kind of trail that says this is who did it and have approved their use case. And one of the great things that the Bot Center lets us do is it lets us put in, what do we think either the time or the money saved is? Is it, per run, per task? And so it generates a dashboard for us based on how many times the bot has run, how many unique users, all these good things. So we can tell that story, up to our management and say, yeah, this bot, it is consistently working. It's healthy. It's got, less than 5% error rate. It's generating so much ROI converted to, dollar amount based on time saved or whatnot. So that's one of the ways that we document after it's deployed. And then in terms of design and sign off and all that stuff, I'm sure every enterprise has required SDLC documentation. So do that, it will make your life easier later. But then we go a little bit above that, and we also take into account auditors and business regulators and the things we know they're going to look for as well. So more than just the IT minimum, we look at, all right, what are the potential risks and how we're mitigating them from a business perspective, document all of that stuff. And we keep it all saved in basically a glorified SharePoint site by line of business and then by project, so that theoretically, if I were to get hit by the beer truck, anybody can find anything that I was working on, whether it's today or 5 years ago, right? They can go and they can see all those design documents and they can see all the changes that I've made, anything like that. We do keep a record anytime we go in and make an enhancement. We say, all right, this change number was associated with this code change functionality, and we got sign off from this person. So that there's just, it's all about a paper trail or a digital paper trail.
Real quick, Afreen, I'm going to ask Anna this is from Michelle. Hi, Michelle. Do you have your bot library registry tied into your CMDB?
Yes, we do. And this has actually been a point of contention with us. We have some bots that we consider parent and child relationship. And so, for example, we'll go into one application and there might be 5 or 6 bots that do different things in that application. And so one of the issues where we've run into CMDB causing problems for us is we don't necessarily want a unique CMDB ID for that. It's an application family is what CMDB is trying to get us to use. And we're kind of vying to use subservices. So we have one service with multiple subservices. And so that's definitely a conversation you want to have up front before you get too deep into your automation journey, and say, what makes sense? What architectural structure do we want to go with? And then kind of commit to that and say, if things change in the future, we'll reassess, but does it make sense to have a different CMDB ID for every bot, or does it make sense to group them? And CyberArk is a pretty common thing, but that's where, at least with TIAA, we were getting into issues with CyberArk. They want a specific ARC for every CMDB ID. And I don't know if that's a CyberArk enterprise policy at TIAA or if that's something that's also mirrored in the industry, but we don't necessarily want 25 different ARCs with one credential each, right? And so that's kind of our push to not necessarily use CMDB in that way.
Afreen, anything to add on the documenting of the bots?
I think Anna covered documentation, but I'll tackle the monitoring. So our citizen developers, it's, basically one developer per team in the business. So what initially we had decided, CDs will go out, tackle all projects in all orgs, but that wasn't feasible. So per team, we have one citizen developer. So what they're doing is the developer is working with the SME also in their team to monitor these bots on a regular basis. So they're maintaining it. We highly depend on both the SME and the developer to reach back and say, hey, something's broken, or this bot needs to be terminated, etc. That dependency is there. So we're fully engaging the SME in this automation process.
Great. I know we touched on this a little bit, but anything to add on just how are you training your citizen developers, and what does that program look like?
So on our end, we do require them to take the Automation Anywhere Citizen Developer Basics training. So that's step 1. And step 2 for training is what I do is I have them take a basic use case from their day-to-day job, and then they work with me for about a month on a weekly basis to build out that bot. We learn the nuances of the tool, et cetera. We talk about what other folks are doing. So it's really that one-on-one engagement that gets that foundation set. And then they're off on their own. They can set up time with me. We do have Automation Anywhere engineers, come in if we have any issues, et cetera. So I think basing that foundation within my team has just been exceptionally helpful to grow our program, because they have a key person. They don't feel lost, or they don't get, they have someone to communicate to. They're not dependent on, just finding something of the sort on the internet, right? They can directly reach out to me. And I think that covers how we do training.
Yeah, we certainly encourage our citizen developers to make use of the Automation Anywhere University. All that training is out there. It's specific to Automation Anywhere. So I find incredibly helpful. We do offer the educational licenses that include access to the live training. So not just the webinars, but the virtual classes as well that are instructor led. And then, Afreen, I think you mentioned this as well. We did, and I'm kind of chuckling now, remembering the name, way back when we first started with Automation Anywhere at TIAA, we had a couple, like 2 or 3 different factories. And so we created a Yammer group, again, dating myself that we're using Yammer, but we called it the Masterminds, and it was MAA, right, for Automation Anywhere. And so that was a place for us to go and ask questions, right? Like pre-Automation Anywhere community platform. Hey, how are y'all doing this? Internal to TIAA, knowing our applications and our structure, but potentially, picking up some nuggets from sharing and communicating. So having the training available, but also having a forum where you can ask questions. You might not get an answer, but occasionally you do find that nugget. So just having that place to go. We do a lot of peer code reviews, and that's honestly how I think most of our citizen developers pick stuff up is, oh, here's a slick trick that I figured out. Let me show you a demo while we're doing this code review.
I've also found that, as many training videos as I can provide, it's less interesting to citizen developers unless they're working on a process, that's important to them. So being able to work with them on something that excites them is the way to go. They have access to any and all the training they can, and they do that when they need to, but using the use cases that directly affect them to help them learn is the best way to go.
Yep, I love that. This is pretty technical. Probably, if anybody have any additional questions, we're going to be wrapping here in just a minute. But do you have your citizen developers in the business, it's not their day job, complete a process design document?
Yes, that's a requirement. So back to not being a shadow IT, we don't want to do things differently than what IT does because it is, changes in the system. So we do require that.
Great. Okay, well, I would just like to thank all 3 of you for your contributions and your insight. Also, thank you so much to our attendees. Chris, I'm still laughing at our body McBot face. I think we could have a whole channel for bot names, and we all need to have our own shirts that have our favorite bot names. So thank you so much for your insight. Both of Anna and Efrain, you guys are great partners. We appreciate your contributions, and Annie, thank you so much for leading the discussion. Just a few items of business to kind of wrap up today's session. For those of you who haven't heard, Imagine is coming. Imagine 2023 will be in Austin in September, and we're really excited to have the community be a part of that. We are offering early bird pricing, so if you can sign up now, you'll get a discount. So the earlier you sign up, the better. Can't wait to see you there. The next, or the last item of business is, as you all know, generative AI is a hot topic right now, and we are committed to providing resources and events to address how automation and generative AI are interacting. So there is a link here. Go check out the resources and get engaged. We'd love your feedback. As always, we appreciate everybody spending their time with us. Look forward to seeing you again. Check out today's mission plans on the community website, and we'll see you again soon.